Embers Adrift, the new MMORPG by Stormhaven Studios, has captured my attention quite a bit lately. It has a charming purity that I've found so refreshing as someone looking for a different style of modern MMO. It's scratching an itch I've had for many years, and that feels really good. And Embers Adrift truly stands alone in the MMO space right now with its classically spirited design. It embraces a lot of principles from MMOs of a previous era. There just aren't any other new games doing what this game is doing right now. And while there are other options for players looking for this in their game, like Project 99 or other emulated versions of classic MMOs, there hasn't been a new MMO like Embers Adrift in a very long time. And this is something that there's certainly a demand for. It's almost the entire reason a game like Pantheon Rise of the Fallen by Visionary Realms has been able to continue its development over the course of many years, and that's crowdfunding. As a part of that crowd myself, for quite some time, I've seen firsthand the volume of players who are interested in a game that does something different in this way. And while, like myself, there has been a segment of the Pantheon community that have tried and are currently enjoying Embers, it seems like that number is less than you might think. And that's purely just based on observational and anecdotal evidence on my part, to be fair. But even within the group of Pantheon hopefuls I speak to on an almost daily basis, there's a distinct sense that Embers isn't scratching that old school itch for them as it is for me. So I asked why. What's holding people back from embracing Embers Adrift while waiting for Pantheon? And what does that mean for Pantheon's future prospects? I posed this question to the Pantheon community in both our Discord as well as on Twitter, and during our recent gameplay streams. I got some interesting responses which I'll refer back to throughout the video. So, join me for a deep dive as I try to answer the question, why not Embers Adrift? The best way to tackle this topic, I believe, is to look at exactly what makes Embers Adrift this unique type of MMO right now. The things that give it its classic feel. I think we can identify these as 5 core ideas. Embers Adrift is a game where you simply must interact with other people to get things done after level 6, basically. Forming groups, buying and selling items, navigation, and learning about the world are all done via actually talking to other players. Believe it or not, global chat is once again a useful tool in-game to get valuable information, and not just a place for bad jokes, annoying chatter, and learning how WoW was the first MMO that ever existed. In terms of combat, while you can do limited solo combat out in the field, you're much better off grouping from both an experience and loot perspective. As you level up, the soloable content really thins out, and even mobs out in the open field are dangerous to the lone wolf player. Soloing your way to max level is simply not a thing in this game, and if you are a solo player only, this game's not going to be very friendly towards you. There are a lot of MMOs out there right now where no matter what class you choose, you'll be able to perform any role reasonably well, more or less. Embers Adrift makes your class choice, well, a real choice. Supporters heal, strikers damage, and defenders defend. Within each of those 3 archetypes are 3 further specializations for a total of 9 distinct classes in the game. This goes for the harvesting and crafting classes as well. And you can only be one, so you'll need others in this area too. So if you're a prospector / armorsmith / defender, that's what you are and nothing else. Limits create definition. Classes in Embers Adrift are well defined. So for this one, I broke it down into 3 subcategories. First is navigation. And while there is a map, it's purposely old-fashioned in Embers Adrift, trading function for form. One of the things I absolutely love about this game is a return to learning the lands, using familiar sights to get where you want to go. When I learned that the giant moon in the sky would always be to the north, it was one of those moments that seems like such a perfect solution to the modern problem of minimap myopia. Things in Embers Adrift happen on a very local scale. If you want to group for a dungeon, you actually have to be able to get there. No putting your name on a list and waiting for the dungeon to find you. If you want to buy and sell items, you need to actually meet up with your trading partner. No global auction house or mail system. Your physical location in the world has meaning, again creating definition for your gameplay experience. One main bag, one gathering bag for harvestable items. That's it, that's all you get. If you want access to your bank and your personal stash, you need to get back to town. No summon bank access, magical portals to your stored gear, and no 80-slot crafted bags going on here. You need to be selective when it comes to what you carry at all times, because when you die, whatever's in your bag could be lost forever. You learn really quickly to keep your coin in the bank, so trips back to town become purposeful. A time to organize your gear, buy and sell, craft what you need, get ready for that next excursion. Home is no longer wherever you happen to be in the world. Embers Adrift is a slow game for sure. The time to kill in combat is notably long, travel takes time, and leveling feels like a real accomplishment. The game completely throws away the modern MMO design where the endgame is where the real game starts. You actually play the real game the moment your journey begins. It's an investment, a commitment, and a game that asks you to make it your MMO home. Since the game launched in October, I can't say I've seen one max level character yet, and that, in and of itself, is kind of amazing. That's not to say the leveling speed is exactly what I think it should be. Finding the right balance between progression and a reasonable playtime needed for you to feel like you've accomplished something isn't easy. Embers Adrift isn't tuned as well as I think it could be on this front. You're not getting a lot accomplished in a couple hours, so keep that in mind. Nevertheless, progression is a big deal in this game. So for all these reasons, I've thoroughly enjoyed Embers Adrift. I find the simplicity and familiarity extremely comfortable, leading to a natural desire to log in each day and explore, progress my characters, and just see what people are doing. I feel invested in my character and the community. In short, it feels like a world more than a game. If you're in the Pantheon community, that phrase, as with many things on this list, probably sound pretty familiar. They're regularly cited as the rationale for following Pantheon's development. So, what's the issue? Now, this was a bit of a surprise to me when I received several replies highlighting this as an issue. The feeling of being on a road to nowhere, feeling purposeless, and not having defined objectives was cited by several folks. The quest journal was noted to be too vague as well, adding to the sense of being without goals. Questing in Embers Adrift is certainly notable for these reasons. There is no main story quest that you're given upon logging in for the first time. You're not the hero sent to save the world, you're just another drifter having arrived in this land. The lore of the world is discovered through speaking with NPCs, none of whom have any indicators that they have a quest to share, or valuable information about the world. The now comical exclamation point above the head is not something you'll see in Embers Adrift. For me, this has been a welcome change. The freedom the game gives me when it comes to questing and lore discovery is just what I'm looking for. To me, questing feels light and ingrained in the adventuring and discovery I would be doing anyway. Now, this one was the most popular response in the Twitter poll I posted, and without a doubt, the one I empathize with the most. Playing in a low fantasy setting feels mundane, lacking in imagination, and just too grounded in the real world to truly capture the escapism many people are looking for in their MMO. It's a world without the goblins, griffins, and golems, beset by beasts and bandits of everyday existence. Beyond the aesthetic trappings, the lack of functional magic system prevents some routine mechanics from working in ways we've come to expect. The best example being how healing in Embers Adrift works, with your healers having to be extremely close to you and positioned properly to apply the bandages for their healing to be applied. It's a really clunky system in the service of the low fantasy setting, and it really detracts from the game. Similar to lacking in magic, Embers Adrift has been cited for being released early, before the entirety of the content intended was fully implemented. It's not hard to see that in-game either. There are large areas in New Haven City with NPCs that don't have much to say, enemies that behave strangely when you pull them, and a distinct lack of post-level 30 content, which may actually explain why I've never seen a level 50 character. The MMO community can be a critical bunch, for sure. and a game like Embers, with its throwback simplicity, is already a target for criticisms of being incomplete just based on its uncomplicated nature. So while I can't fully rebut this critique, I would say I feel it's a bit overstated. Firstly, until about level 20, there's numerous dungeons to explore. There's camps to break, some named creatures to hunt, and lots of items to acquire. Yes, this all occurs basically in 2 distinct zones, but it is there. From a systems perspective, I feel like this issue is a product of context. There is an expectation that a complete modern MMO launches with certain systems in place, whether it's PvP or an auction house or a more robust looking for group tool and so on and so forth. Even if those things are counter to the design philosophy of the game, their absence is rarely understood on that level. It's just seen as an unfinished product, not a purposeful design choice, as I believe it is here. So while yes, there are ways that Embers Adrift could have benefited from further development time, I also feel like the content it currently has is reasonable. And for me, it's enough that I don't feel like I'm playing a game in an early access. But that's a fairly low standard to hold. MMO worlds at their best hold mysteries, secrets, and elicit a sense of discovery in their world. The feeling that there's always something behind the waterfall, to use a recognizable trope. Embers Adrift doesn't get to this level. The world, at least right now, is a fairly obvious place without hidden places or just out of reach places you'll need to return to later. The best worlds keep you yearning to see what's in that place you can see, but not reach, at least not yet. On the visual front, I received a reply that Embers Adrift isn't even on par with MMOs of 20 years ago. While this seems patently false to me, I don't want to dismiss the idea entirely. Perhaps modern MMO players, looking for a game like those of 20 years ago, expect them to look like a AAA studio game, or at least more polished than Embers Adrift does. Remember that EverQuest was a game that pushed the boundaries of graphical fidelity at the time it came out. Of course, graphics are always a subjective metric, as people like different styles, whether it's a realistic look or anime aesthetic, or even a more painterly quality. To me, I enjoy how Embers Adrift looks a lot. The fidelity is high enough that I find the environmental textures immersive. The character model's decent, although the hairstyles leave something to be desired, and the excellent lighting being especially noteworthy. The color palette is admittedly on the earthy side of things, with very few brightly colored armor pieces or eye-catching weapons, and the player character models do possess a little bit of the sameness to them, which I've heard some folks mention as something that has turned them off the game. Lastly, it was highlighted that players have very few skills to use for a large part of the early experience, and those you do get lack depth. At a rate of gaining 1 skill every few levels, by level 10 you only have about 6 skills to utilize in combat. I tend to agree that this does feel fairly constricted given the pace of leveling. Flashbacks of EverQuest, where kicking snakes and auto-attacking for what seemed like an eternity, are definitely here. The flip side of this, of course, is getting a skill feels like a real milestone. But what if having those skills are subpar? Some replies felt there's also a distinct lack of depth in the skills. Having played a Warden and a Marshal to level 10, I would say this is partially true. The skills I've had occasion to use do some of the standard MMO things like dots and debuffs and straight up damage. Now the Marshal gets an AoE movement inhibitor, giving it quasi-crowd control, while my Warden employs a skill that causes the next 3 attacks to be guaranteed crits. It may be that their basic function is masked by the unnecessarily complex descriptions they get, but I do feel like there's more room to experiment with these skills in ways that's kept my interest. So let's wrap up this already too long video. Have we answered the question of why Pantheon hopefuls aren't salivating over Embers Adrift? I'd say yes, as I think it comes down to wanting the core ideas Embers Adrift is built upon, but that's just not enough to this type of player. They need a game that takes those core ideas and builds upon them, instead of just recreates them. For example, the social interaction within a more modern framework that doesn't detract from the need, but rather facilitates it. Group content that demands more than just a damage sponge, a bandager, and a bleeder, because the enemy AI uses skills creatively to assist each other and take combat to the next level. Modern conveniences that are mindful of trading efficiency for player isolation, but don't forego it entirely. evolved systems at the end of the day. These are the things I think players are looking for in a modern MMO of this style. And this is why I think Pantheon Rise of the Fallen can succeed here on a greater scale than we've seen with Embers Adrift. For those following this game, you've heard them talk about creating deep, robust systems and not being satisfied with creating just a remake or reskin of older MMOs, despite their love for those games. VR appears to understand that to truly capture the player base that's craving a new MMO that remembers the past, they have to go ahead and bring that concept into 2022. Pantheon gets a lot of heat for its lengthy development time, which is largely due to a steadfast insistence on not repeating mistakes of past MMO development like Vanguard Saga of Heroes. So I'll leave you with this question to answer in the comments. Is Embers Adrift a vision of what Pantheon would be if they compromised their goals and prioritized release over a fulsome game experience? Thanks for sticking with this video to the end. Here at Pantheon Plus, we've been streaming Embers Adrift on Tuesdays and Thursday nights on our shows MMORPGs 101 and 201. We're continuing to do so until January 17th, 2023, when we'll be delivering our grades for this game. So if you want to hear more than just my opinion on the game, and I guarantee there are some wildly different opinions to be heard, make sure you're subscribed both here on YouTube and to our Twitch channel to catch the show live. And for more Pantheon and other MMO content, check out our podcast, The Rewind, some lore videos, and opinion videos just like this one, right here on this channel. As always, cheers, and thanks for watching.